because it involved thousands of meters high. It was seen for miles all over the place, and Mr. Bertslinger and Mr. Schutzbach were duly impressed. As a matter of fact, both of them wrote long 2- and 3-page reports about exactly what they've seen, because they were pretty blown away to drive Billy out to a contact and then get to see this, on their first time out. So as far as collaboration, we have 2 more witnesses here who didn't see the shape of the ship, but they saw the ship going through gyrations and causing lights and so forth in the sky. On the 50th contact, which was not long after that, Billy's followed again, and this time he's got about 5 people with him, and he's being followed again by a little Volkswagen with a parabolic screen on it on top of it that's chasing him around, and he's also being followed by this red car again. So there's more and more people are dogging him every time he goes out to try to have a contact. So Semjase sees that someone is following, is right close behind, and as a matter of fact, this person is so close behind him it's interfering with the contact itself. So she interferes, and she sends an electrical charge of some type into the car, hitting the magneto and causing the car to fail so it can't continue to follow Billy. And she says, it looks like we're going to have to find more and more secret places for these meetings and ways of getting you out of the house. Okay, also on this contact, Billy had brought with him 5 or 6 of his friends, and they were going to be allowed at the end of the contact to see the ship. Semjase was exposing herself, I guess you might say, more and more to members of the group, because she was encouraging Billy to get the group together and trying to encourage the group members to come forward to help with the mission. So more and more the people of the group were being able to see the ship and hear more of the information from Semjase. Well, Billy has a couple of broken ribs, so she brought with her a device of some type that will take care of that. And she tells him to set in this particular spot between 2 poles. It said, that's all it says. It's just Billy sets between 2 poles for a couple of minutes, and the bones are mended. So some sort of field is generated by these poles, causing rapid healing. She says you wouldn't even be able to tell that the bones were ever broken. The skin, though, still around the ribs is still inflamed, and that's going to be sore for a while. Billy has a question about the American government. He says there are rumors that the American government has crashed UFOs, and they have bodies of little ETs and so forth, and wants to know if there's any truth to that. And she says, yes, it is, that the American government has material from a destroyed spaceship. She says they don't have a real spaceship, and the pieces that they do have are so banged up that they wouldn't be able to tell anything from it anyway. And they do have, they have some dead bodies. She didn't say how many. She says they have dead bodies of little dwarf-like ETs. But she reiterated that they do not have any functioning ships. Billy wanted to know, is there an underground base at Unterberg, wherever Unterberg is? And he had been hearing rumors that there was an extraterrestrial facility there. She says, no, it's not extraterrestrial. There's no ETs there. What it is there's a group of Earth people who had built an underground facility. It was not a government. It was an independent group. And they were using the German plans that were around during World War II to build their own flying disc. And they've been reasonably successful. She says, actually, they have flying discs. It cannot leave the atmosphere of the planet. But she said that the disc have quite a few capabilities and are very advanced. And these people like to pretend that they're ETs. And she wasn't exactly sure why, but apparently they're trying to either fool people as a joke, or they're trying to, say they're ETs to cause, people to follow them or whatever. Again, just being deceitful. So if you hear about an underground base at Unterberg with flying discs, don't be too quick to think that they're extraterrestrial. It's our own people. Billy asked about these supposed tunnels that run underground around the planet. And she says, of course, in earlier times that the ancestors of the Earth people, there were tunnels built all over the planet. And there was a complete underground system. Most of them are kind of damaged because of earthquakes over the years, and they're not fully functional any longer. And she noted that the one in Guatemala had been crashed because of an earthquake and was no longer, wasn't there. It just filled in. In response to another question, she says the Pleiadians do not smoke. They don't drink like we do, but she says they do have something similar to alcohol. They do have drinks that are something like that. But apparently she says they have it, but they apparently don't use it. They don't have a drinking problem like we do. We have a drinking problem because it's big business. You know, it's always puzzled me why the number one problem in the United States, alcohol, creates so many problems with our young people, even our old people. I mean, alcoholism is a serious problem in this country, and we do nothing to stop it because the revenue from alcohol is huge. You probably don't know this, but the revenue from alcohol is the second largest revenue in the government. It's only exceeded by income tax. So alcohol is very important economically. That's why we support it. Not that it has any good for our society. We should just stop alcohol, but oh no. Semjase mentions again that not only is she going to give a demonstration for the 5 women who are waiting, they're all 5 of them are women, and she says it's no accident that you brought 5 women tonight, that she had been sending telepathic thoughts to these 5 women, and Billy wanted to know what about. And she says, well, that's none of your business. It's just between us and the women, me and the women. And Billy was a little surprised, and he says, you mean you have secrets? She says, well, not really secrets, it's just women talk. And apparently she was kind of getting to know these women and sending them thoughts and so forth, and Billy wasn't really privileged to that. Before that contact ended, Semjase again had to refer to Billy about having so much difficulty taking care of his family. Billy was making such an issue about it being anti-materialist, about not getting his books out, not speaking for money, not providing any income for his family, that not only was his family suffering, but the mission was going to suffer from it also, and she was literally almost scolding him how he keeps evading this, where he works so hard all the time on his books and his writings, but his leadership abilities are nil. And ultimately this is what stops the contacts anyway after a while, because they finally just don't want to go on with this, because he's not handling his leadership correctly, either for his group or for his family. Okay, we move up to the 51st contact, which was Tuesday, and that was on April 27th, 76. And Billy is told, to his surprise, that one of these little cars that's been following him around is actually his old friend Hans Jacob, and that Hans has become a little embittered by Billy and has turned against him, and Billy, without knowing it, has an enemy now. And that Hans Jacob, who he thought was his loyal friend, is now working with other groups of people against Billy, and is responsible for either one or some of the cars that follow him to the contacts. So Billy's rather surprised by this, because he has, I guess you would call it, sabotage and intrigue going on in his own group. Quite often the Pleiadians would have to step in and examine the thoughts of the people around Billy and watch for ulterior motives. And it happened rather frequently. There was a lot of jealousy and so forth within the group members. And here we have a case of Hans, who is one time his closest friend and going to be his speaker and lecturer on behalf of Billy, is now working against him. Billy has a question about the age of Earth. Earlier he was told by Semjase that the Earth was 626 billion years old, and he's told this to an astronomer who doesn't believe it and says that he's all wrong. And so he's asking Semjase for a lengthier explanation that might serve for this astronomer. She says, well, no, it is true. The Earth is 626 billion years old, but they age the Earth from the formation of the gas ball. And Earth technology at the moment has no way of doing that. We can only age things in the material form. She says the Earth began to form in the gaseous state 646 billion years back. It took 600 billion years for the Earth to solidify. Then it took over 40 billion years for the Earth to evolve up to the point of where the human being then came upon the Earth, evolved naturally on the Earth. So there's only traces of the human form of life in any shape back 6 billion years. So she says it's unfortunate that your astronomer that they have not advanced to the point yet where they can, be able to judge the age of planet bodies back to the gaseous state, but our technology is coming along. Okay, that's about all that was any value on that contact. The 52nd contact was on Monday. That was on May 17th, 76. Billy's asking about a race of giants in Peru. There's something in the news about a race of giants that are coming up from underground cities and kidnapping the white women, and they're disappearing and went with them. And he wanted to know about that. And she said, yes, that is true. It's happening. That there is a race of kind of red-brown skinned Indian-looking beings there, and they are the old enemies and descendants of the Incas. About 500 years ago, they went underground to hide out. Very seldom come up, but they will be doing so more and more in the future because of volcanoes and other reasons. They're being forced out from underground. There are tunnels all over South America, and apparently there are any number of old ancestors of old races living down there in these subterranean places, and they're tall. They're giants. They're about 200 centimeters tall, which I don't know how that relates to inches. I haven't learned my metric conversions yet. So if you're a metric person, they're average 210 centimeters tall. Mr. Guido Moosberger at this time from Austria becomes a friend of Billy's and starts getting involved in the contacts. Guido, by the way, has just written a wonderful book all about Billy's life and his touring in America, giving some talks, so there'll be some insights there at the personal level. One of Mr. Moosberger's, Guido's, first questions he had for the Pleiadians was about the curse of the pharaohs. He wanted to know if there really was such a thing. And she says, no, there really wasn't a curse. They didn't have the ability to actually curse, the future, but knowing that their graves would be robbed and so forth, and that their bodies, even their sarcophagus, would be open and so forth, they wanted to defend themselves as best they could. So they found a poison that's taken from the small little spine-like hairs from the Figindus cactus. Now, I may be pronouncing that wrong. I'm not up on my cacti, but it says Figindus, Figidindus cactus. And it has a poison that will last a long time, maybe even up to 1,000 years. The pharaohs, knowing this, after their bodies were wrapped, they would take these very small hairs, which are even very hard to see, and they would put the hairs in the body wraps of their body. So in the future, when people would come in to rob the sarcophagus or the coffin, whatever, and if they would touch the wrappings around the body and so forth, they would get in their skin and it would kill them. This was one of the defense mechanisms they built in. Not knowing this, people think that somehow just being in the coffin area that they're being affected by a curse, but there is no curse. She went on to explain about the pyramids that at the time the pyramids were built, which again was 73,300 years back from 1975 by our earlier descendants, the Lyrians, that when they were built, the astronomers of the time apparently were quite astute. Well, they would be if they were, ETs from another planet, if they were Lyrians, and they would have a lot of knowledges that the local Earthmen did not have. She says they could see into the future, and they could see that there were great cosmic events that were going to come upon the Earth and cause major destruction, and that they actually built information and data about these coming events into the pyramid. This information has to do with disasters that are somehow going to come upon the Earth because of something from the cosmos. They even took into account when they designed these pyramids the fact that the axis would change, and they knew coming events were going to happen that would cause the Earth to actually change its rotation and positioning, and they took that into account also. So these were pretty sharp guys. There is a prophecy then built into the data in the numeric system of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it speaks of a time at which the central sun of the Milky Way and our own sun system will shine through a tube-like opening in the pyramid into the center of the pyramid and illuminate at one particular point. Now, I've been in the Great Pyramid, and I know what she's talking about. I actually tracked these tube things down. The Egyptians and the people that are over there refer to them as just air vents, and they're clogged up. So at some point, if the sun ever does try to shine through them, it isn't ever going to happen because they're filthy. The Egyptians that live there now, which are all Arabs, there are no more Egyptians in Egypt, really. Well, actually, there are. There's about 40,000 left. They've kind of gone the way like the American Indian. The country was overrun by Arabs, and the Egyptians are all just like scattered in the southern regions. But they don't take care of the pyramid at all. They really don't care anything about it past just picking up a few piastres, they're called. That's their money. They're called piastres. I think it's about 30 piastres, to get in to see the pyramid. That's all they really care about. And they give you all sorts of hokey stories over there about the pyramid and when it was built, just anything to kind of amuse you, to make some money. But she said that